Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Shields, and I've got a frequent flyer guest, one of my good buddies. Will Humphreys is in the house. Will, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Nate, thank you. I appreciate it. I love being in the house, specifically in the closet.
I'm going back to the 90s references today. In the house.
You got a groovy guest, yes. A really groovy guy.
Let's raise the roof. So thanks for joining me. Man, I just had you on a couple months ago, and we're still surviving through the pandemic. PT owners are starting to ramp up a little bit. Some places might still be closed. But I don't know, they're getting the 50, 60, 70% range in productivity, whatnot. And last time we talked about what people can do while things are shut down or slowed significantly. So, but I wanted to bring you back on because today we're going to talk about a number of different things. We're going to go back in history a little bit. But first, what have you been doing since we last spoke?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, as you know, I went to Europe for 6 months with my family, and I came back to Empower Physical Therapy, our company that we love and cherish. And gratefully, they were at a point where things were going pretty well. And so I started having some ideas of how I could better serve the industry. And, they've been incredibly supportive over there of helping me go out and do other things. So what I've done in the last 3 months is a couple of things I'm really excited about. One of them is like a dream, like something I've been wanting to do for 10 years, and I'm actually doing it. One of them is that I started a insurance billing company. It's called In the Black. I mentioned it briefly at the end of our last time together.
Yeah, you were just kind of getting things going at that point, from what I remember.
Yeah, it's been crazy, dude, because, I came back with a different proposition than what's out there for billing companies. There's a couple of really good companies out there that I love that are PT owned, but none of them address all of the different influences that impact our profits and finances. So, we're a full RCM business, which means that we don't just do billing and collecting. We also do insurance verification. We do provider credentialing. I also provide training to front office and back office as part of that. There's no additional fee to that. I coach with, so it's been fun because we look at all the items, including P&Ls of what shape a company. And when I was a PT, I used to think that like an outsourced PT billing company was like the worst way to go.
Well, we had some bad experiences.
Yes, we did.
You know how they do it wrong.
Oh yeah. I do. I think that was really the biggest thing, is that when I did end up having you and I created, it was your hire that led to this in-house solution that was massive.
Oh, so dude, we killed it.
It was unreal. And ultimately it was the biggest reason why when we came together and merged, our company did so well. But ultimately, I wanted to share that message because I believe profitability unlocks possibility. Yeah. We didn't know, you and I, how freedom felt until we were able to get the profits to help generate that. That's true. When you and I did that, that's when we looked at Alaska. That's when we looked at all these things. So In the Black, the website is coming out in August. We stopped taking new customers for the next 2 months because we had such a high demand. Wow. That when we've opened, that we're satisfying our first 20 locations. And we're trying to do that from a place of absolute, and they're loving it, which makes me happy. We try to keep really close relationships, which is different. And it's been going great.
That's cool.
So, but we will be taking new customers for any potential listeners in about 2 months.
Well, and for those who are listening, of course, this is coming out probably the end of June of 2020. So your website should be out around August 1st, 2020, and you'll be taking more customers at that point. But I don't want to disparage outsourced billing because of our experiences, but because of our experiences, what people should really truly experience from their billing company, whether it is in-house or outsourced. I mean, I talk with my coaching clients all the time about the statistics they need to be looking for and the reports they should be receiving from their biller, because so many of them are like, I don't even know how to judge if they're good, and that's where we were so many times until our biller actually showed us proper reports and statistics. We didn't know if they were good either. But as we got that experience and started seeing how billing should be managed, now coming from that point of view, you can provide a service that really lacks out there in the PT industry.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to acknowledge there are a couple of companies that are doing it really well. I'm a big fan of Meg. I love those guys. I think they're great. Bob's company, Billing Solutions. I can't remember. Anyway, there's another company that's fantastic. You know, we're all offering just a little something different, but we're all PT owned. And I think that's the thing, is that as PT owned billing companies, we offer so much more of that relatable, you know, advice, experience, knowledge set. So that's been going really great. And then the thing I've been super excited about as well is I launched a YouTube channel 1st of June on my 44th birthday.
Congrats.
Yeah, you know better than anyone how I just need attention as much as I don't know if my parents didn't pay attention to me growing up, but like there's something feels whole when I'm filming a video.
You're a middle child syndrome of some kind.
Yeah, I'm the third born. I'm always like, look at me, I'm helpful.
But what about me? So you had to get that, and it's not just, the cool thing is your YouTube channel isn't specific to PT owners, but also PT students, which is kind of cool. Because there's no one really out there speaking to PT students, which is pretty interesting that you would take that tack. But you share some awesome input and have some great content for PT owners as well. I love the stuff that you're doing right now in regards to C players and how to find them and handle them. That's great.
Well, thanks. It means a lot to me. You were such an inspiration to even do it with this podcast. I mean, when it's one thing to have the time and desire to want to go put yourself out there in that way, especially when you've been through hell back, 4 or 5 times, you want to share those experiences with your colleagues. And ultimately, like you, this podcast, my YouTube channel is a love letter to my industry. It's given me everything that I have. I'm still this incredibly passionate PT who just thinks there's no better job in the world. So everything that you and I, especially invested in with coaches and clients and all these things that we've done over the years, I'm giving that information. On Tuesdays, it's all, at this point, it might shift, but Tuesdays is centered towards leaders and owners. Thursdays, it's for students and new grads. And on students and new grads, it's things like, how do you stand out in job interviews? How do you find a job in the COVID environment, right? The 7 mistakes in most interviews. For PT owners, it's all talking about all the stuff that we've been through and learned from. But it's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of initial success out of the gate. And I think that's a perfect way to say that, guys like you paved the way, man. When you launched your podcast, how many, there was like maybe a couple, maybe a handful of podcasts, right?
Yeah. When I first started, there were maybe 2 or 3 that stood out. But the reason I wanted to do the podcast was simply because there was no one speaking to the business aspect. I liked Paul Goff's stuff, and he focuses a little bit more on marketing, and he has some really great insight. In fact, his first 2 episodes were like, I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Then was there another one that I can't recall? But I know there were a couple of them out there, the PT Insiders, but a lot of them were either about marketing or about patient care. And I was like, dude, I want more help as a leader, as an owner, someone. And you and I had developed this amazing network of PT owners. And I'm like, dude, we got so much information out of just picking their brains. We'd go to these conferences and you might learn something from a presenter here and there, but it was the in-between sessions and the dinners where you sit down with really successful PT owners, like Corey and Bueller in California, or John and Chad out in San Antonio, or Blaine up in Montana. And I was like, why can't there be a platform for those guys to share their successful actions? And I thought podcast was a great way to do that. And it's been so cool. We were on our 104th, 103rd something episode as of this one.
Dude, you're kind of you're stealing the wind out of my sails.
I'm sorry.
I wanted to announce to the world that this is your 2nd year anniversary, and you've broken 100 podcasts.
Yay!
So freaking amazing. It's another thing to even stay with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For 2 years. And I love that you mentioned some of those. It's just such a big thing I want to acknowledge. And I hope all the listeners at home or in their car are just grateful for guys like you who are standing out, who are building upon the efforts of others to find additional ways to create value. No one is doing it the way that you're doing it. And definitely with this kind of consistency that builds trust. I love how you mentioned like the heroes of our networks before, and you mentioned some of them by name. When you said those names, I felt chills because I remember what it was like feeling like a freshman in high school, and they were like the seniors.
So, yeah.
And you're like, dude, these guys are so cool.
Will they talk to me? Well, can I ask them a question?
Right. Like, you want to hang out at lunch or no? Okay. They're like the nicest guys in the world, right? Like who else would you say are some of your PT heroes?
Oh, dude, who's not a fan of Vinod?
Vinod.
Oh my gosh, he was one of my first episodes, Vinod. So if you guys haven't listened to Vinod's episode, here's a guy who's got a killer business in New York City, but lives full time in Florida. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to live that dream, right? It's so Vinod kills it. I mean, I knew Blaine was super successful in Montana, but then I went to Whitefish, Montana, and I was like, oh. Now this is a cool place, and this is where I would love to live. So Blaine was amazing. Those guys are just great. I mean, I love hanging out with them. And then Bill out in Detroit with HQPT. I mean, here's a guy who's really, he's really unassuming. And then he tells you he's got like 15, 16, 18 clinics. And, he's just walking around in shorts and a t-shirt.
And by the way, I'm pretty sure he has like a 6-pack. He's got 0 body fat. And I'll tell you, if I ever get to the point where I can see my abs, you will not find me with my shirt on. I will be on the podcast just like, hey, look at that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't pan down now.
Don't pan down now. Yeah.
No, but some other time. So yeah, I loved these guys, and they're so willing to talk to you. Like you mentioned, we were kind of nervous talking to these guys, and we feel like the underlings, but they're totally open. They're like, yeah, this is what we do, and this is what we'll share. And they do presentations, and you're like, you guys got it. You guys are killing it. I wish I could be like you. And I still feel that way. I'm like, oh, they still have so much to offer. And that's why I think I'll continue with the podcast. There've been a number of times over the last 2 years where I'm like, I turn to my wife, I'm like, oh, I need to pay for more production of my episodes because I don't do all the editing and whatnot myself. I have to pay some more up front. Should I do it? I don't know. Maybe it's run its course. But every so often I just get this jolt and I have an amazing interview with somebody that I think is full of awesome content. And I'm like, the PT world needs to hear more of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess I'll keep going.
Well, I think it's great. I want to challenge everyone listening to comment if you're able to get on iTunes and just make give some love, because what you've done for the industry has been massive. Well, it's so great because we met these guys through a group called Measurable Solutions, which still exists and still has amazing, powerful PTs, Mike and D Bills.
Yeah.
But like the main thing that they presented besides wonderful information was each other. And that's what you're doing. You're connecting our industry. So as a guy or girl is driving in their car or listening to this while they're running, they're feeling like they're a part of something so much bigger than themselves, which is why we got into this whole career in the first place. Not a single PT I've met in all of the years of talking to PTs has ever had a boring story. Even when they think it's boring, there's this huge emotional draw. So the thing I'm curious about, and I'm wondering if you're, as a 2-year anniversary kind of like highlight, I'd like to ask a few questions about things I don't even know.
Sure.
Like in your case, what was it emotionally? You mentioned that you did it because you felt like you wanted to create more value, but like emotionally, what was some of the first experiences you had in terms of like, what were some of the challenges? What were some of the initial wins that you had? Like, what was that like?
With the podcast or with PT ownership specifically?
The podcast. Let's go to the podcast and then let's go into that. Because I'm sure your listeners would love to hear about some of those experiences in the company as well.
Yeah. So some of my experiences, I remember my first episode, and I was interviewing Sean Miller, our good buddy and partner.
Oh yeah.
And I knew he had a great story. And so I wanted to share his story. But I remember just walking through my house for like an hour beforehand, just nervous, telling my wife, 45 more minutes and I got to do my interview. 45. And then I got to sit down and like just shoot the bull with Sean. And he's still one of the most listened to podcasts.
Amazing.
And so, and it was awesome. And I just came away with that, like energized more than anything else I'd really done before. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, physical therapy is very fulfilling, but I rarely came away from a treatment session where I was like, holy crap, that was amazing. That was fun.
Right.
But even if I did that, there was some crappy patient right after that would spoil my day. I'm sure you experienced that well. And then, and by the end of the day, I mean, you'd seen enough patients that you're just kind of drained mentally.
Oh
And
yeah.
so after doing my interviews and and that carries over to my coaching stuff. After doing my coaching client stuff, I can sit on the phone with owners for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and be like, that was cool.
Mm.
And my wife tells me all the time, I come out of the interviews, I come out of my coaching client calls, and I'm like, hey guys, what's up? What's happening? The sky is blue and the birds are chirping. Did you guys notice? And like,
Skipping.
yeah, exactly. So it's really cool because number one, I, I'm curious. I want to
Yeah.
know what's making people tick. Number two, I can come out of those interviews and be like, there was some cool content out there that if the people out there listening really listen and pulled away one or two things could really help their business. And number three, like you said, uh, helping people simply feel connected so that they're not alone. And that's
Mm.
where I felt so much when I started my clinic, and you probably especially as well, since you were out in the boonies of Florence. You just kind of feel like you're on an island. Like you're
Yeah.
on an island, you're on your own. Who else knows that I'm even out here besides my quote unquote competition within a few miles of me? And who, and it wasn't until I started networking and getting consulting that I recognized I'm not alone. There's a whole bunch of people that have already been there, done that. And you know what? They're willing to help. And that's what I wanted to provide owners is like, man, there are people out there and you can reach out to them. And almost every episode, they share their contact information. You can reach out to them. Hardly anyone takes them up on it, but they can, and they can find, and they can pick these people's brains and they're open. You know, it's so funny to have Deemy on, and
Mm.
he'll share his personal cell number. And so,
Wow.
yeah, it's cool stuff like that I love sharing with people, and just gets me energized.
Man, well, it's neat to see you in this space. You know, I've known you for a long time now. I think it's been 20 years.
What?
20 years. Yeah, I met you in 2003 uh,
Really?
at Fat Camp. Um, we,
That's right.
no,
That's right. Fat Camp. I forgot all about
yep.
Fat Camp.
Don't forget about that.
Nope.
You were my sponsor.
Yep.
No, dude. No, we met. Do you remember where we met?
Jeez.
I feel like my wife. Do you know? Do you remember?
What anniversary is it, bro? And what day? Do you
Who are we
remember what I
kidding?
was wearing?
Right. You all know I'm the woman in the relationship.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I met you at church in the hallway or something like that.
Yeah, I remember meeting Whitney before meeting you. I remember she
Oh
came
yeah.
out. You need to work for my husband.
Well, then
And by the way,
she came home and said, I found the guy that needs to work for you. I found our next PT.
So basically, we are here because of Whitney Shields. Shout out to the amazing mother of 7, your wife.
That's right.
Moves to Alaska to start electrodiagnostic company. My gosh, she is an unsung hero, isn't she?
That's right.
So tell me, what was it like for you when you were thinking about those early years? You know, like what were some of those? Do you have any memories? And this is where I'm trying to like serve your audience, is trying to get them to understand a little bit more about you and what I know and maybe what I don't know about your background. So can you think of any experiences that you had that were pivotal to your growth? You know, you've mentioned Measurable Solutions and that wonderful network of people, which by the way, we'd be remiss if we didn't highlight Beth and Lisa out at Magnolia in Louisiana.
Totally.
Some of the most powerful leaders of all kind, like just amazing. But do you have any other moments like that you think of as like pivotal in terms of like, yeah, when that happened, things changed?
You know, taking the first step was huge, right? And I still have to attribute that to Whitney, because I was working full time down in Casa Grande at the hospital. And no, I'm sorry, I was working for a physician-owned PT clinic for about a year and a half. And I remember after work one time, I was like, I was looking at this area and that area to maybe open up a clinic someday. And then I saw a for lease sign of a new construction build down in South Chandler. And I gave Whitney the phone number, and she was going to call him the next morning when I went to work. And she's like, the rates there are amazing. It's a brand new build. We've got to open up a clinic. I was like, oh, we do. this is really happening. And she's like, yeah, put in your 2-week notice. Let's go. And I'm like, oh, okay. Because you know me and change, we don't really jive. And so that's why I married my wife. She's like, change is great. And I'm like, change sucks. And so we're just going along that way. So finally opened that up, and the referring physicians down there were gracious and helpful, especially Dr. Paul Lavin, reached out to me out of the blue. That was great. So, all that was, of course, was pivotal, but you had to learn so much. So back then I was doing the billing myself, and I didn't even know how to do that. And I was doing the credentialing myself, and I was marketing by myself, and I didn't have any support staff. And occasionally I'd ask my mom to come in and help be a tech or something like that. So that was all pretty crazy, but outside of the initial beginnings, right? That was in 2002. Pivotal parts were like you and I opening up the Maricopa clinic, right?
Yeah.
That was a huge change. And I think, of course, we thought it was going to be a lot easier than it was.
Oh man.
And then, but what's really sad, well, I shouldn't say sad. If I look back on it, and I'm going to ask the question to you, what I would have done differently, what I would tell myself as a young owner, knowing what I know now, is, dude, get some coaching or consulting like day one, and hire the people to do the work, and trust the experienced or professional people to do their jobs. It will get you so much further, so much faster. If I could have just if I had seen that, I didn't even know that was an option on the table, right? I'm just like, running by the seat of our pants and just doing what we can. And so, and saving money here and there. I thought that's what you're supposed to do, instead of really investing in the company to help it grow. So that's what I would have done differently. And it's when I started making those investments that things significantly changed. Unfortunately, it took me close to a decade or more before we did that.
And what I would say to that is I remember the day we signed up with Measurable Solutions. We went up there for a 2-day course that I had paid for because I was desperate for help. So I paid for it was like $1,000 course. Yeah. And so last minute, I'm like, do you want to come to Seattle with me? Yeah. It's good. 2 people. You and I hadn't merged our companies yet. So there was some separation in our business model, even though we shared Maricopa. Yeah. And when we went up there, it was mind blowing. We met Steve Rodriguez, who is now family to us. That was I don't even know how many years that was, 6 or 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe. Yes. More than that. I don't know.
I think it's like 7 or 8.
So at the end of it, they're like, hey, here's how you get to freedom, and here's how much it costs, and your jaw just like draws open. And you say you don't handle change, but you were the one who was like, dude, I think we need to do this.
Well, at that point, I distinctly remembering we have to do something different. I don't know what it was. I mean, it could have been like a webinar package for $500. I mean, and this was done anything. And this was significantly more than that. But yes, I would have done. I would have done anything to make it different. I just wasn't experiencing a life that I wanted to continue living. And I would told people all the time is that I loved treating patients, but I hated the business aspect of it. Yeah. And if I have to continue at this pace for another 10 years, I'm going to be done. I'm going to be checked out. I don't know what else I'm going to do, but I'll find a different career. And I think that happens a lot with PTs, by the way. That's a topic for another discussion. But what's funny is since I got the consulting and coaching and networked with Entrepreneurs Organization, it flipped. It's like, I don't get the joy out of treating patients as much anymore. I love treating more patients through other people. and creating a bigger impact within the community, or even within my small clinic, to affect the community, to make it a better experience for not just the patients but also the team members,
Yeah.
and grow and improve that way. And now I get so much more fulfillment out of being a leader and an owner and giving back.
It's amazing. And I don't think that's everyone's journey. I think the reason that aligned for you, I'm going to be your counselor now, but the reason I think that was true is because you were meant to do what you're doing now. I think the problem with a lot of us in our industry as owners is that we get into that mindset of like, but I did this to treat. And that becomes an excuse to not learn what we don't understand about business. I mean, that's in both of us, in both of our cases, I know I had a pivotal moment in my life when it occurred to me. It was on driving home in the dark at the end of a horrible day. My beeper is going off because my charts weigh as much as a human being in the seat next to me. And I am so burned. And it occurs to me in that moment of clarity that it doesn't matter how much I know about patients and patient care and making that process go well. It would never make up for what I didn't understand about business.
Yeah.
And that's why coaches are so valuable. I think you were meant to suffer that way, because now you're supporting this mastermind, which, man, I got a chance to be with those guys. What a powerful, it's like seeing all those wonderful people in our old group at an earlier stage, these powerful men who are like committed to doing something better. And then once they get free of the demands of what they don't know in the business end, then they can always opt and choose to go back and treat electively, but not because the business requires them to do that. I think that's the difference. In your case, you got free, and it was like, I want to share this message with the world, and you have.
Yeah. What would you tell yourself as a younger owner?
Oh man, I for sure, I can't reiterate enough what you said about finding a coach as quickly as humanly possible. When I came back from Europe and I'm still working with Empower, but they were like, hey, go ahead and you have some space to do some other things. As soon as I heard there was space, I hired a coach as quickly as I could get my hands on. And at this point, my beautiful patient wife she saw how much I put down on that. And she was like, no, I get it. Like, you gotta, totally. That's what it is. Freedom comes at a cost, and it comes at a price. We probably paid multiples of our PT degree to ultimately achieve financial freedom.
Oh, hundreds of thousands of dollars, dude.
Yeah. I don't know how specific we were going to get, but I will tell you, and that was over years, but ultimately it was a small investment into what ended up creating impact, income, and freedom.
Totally.
Small.
Yeah. My wife is the same way. I might go a few months without a coach and like find one that's aligned for my purpose and what I'm doing now. And I'll tell her, yeah, it's so many thousands of dollars. And she's like, okay. Whereas that wasn't the case a decade ago. What she's recognized in me, and I know Heather's recognized that in you, is that you having a coach improves you as a business owner and leader, but also improves you as an individual and a father. Right? Because when you're talking about creating freedom and living the life you want to live, a lot of that is not necessarily about you. It's about your relationships, right? With your significant others, your partners, your children, your friends and whatnot. And when you can improve your business to the point where it gives you the freedom and the space and the energy to share with other people, that's when your life changes.
It was a really well said comment. I'm curious, what do you think are some of the things that show up in your personal life that are a result of you having owned a business? How are you different as a father and a husband? Because you had the courage to go out and start a company.
I have a better take on what it takes to lead, and that leadership is not limited to business and professional aspects. There's some leadership as a father that are necessary to lead a family. And so that's important. What's really helped me a lot, and maybe you can speak to it as well, is the ability to have those one-on-one conversations with my wife and children and come at a place of objectivity, out of curiosity, from a point of understanding, and not a place of judgment. and simply learning more about myself as I go through these experiences. You know what I mean? And so it makes me better as a leader. And some of those things that are related to that also include, what's my purpose? What's my individual purpose? I talk about purposes for your family here on the episode, or purposes for your clinic here on the episode. But
Yeah.
what's your purpose, your individual purpose? What's your purpose of your family? What are some of the goals? Just like you have goals for your company, do you have some goals for your individual self as well? And so relating, so much of that, we like to think, well, that's professional life and this is personal life, but how do you draw the line? I mean, so much carryover. People say, don't bring your personal life into the workplace. Yeah, exactly. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Because because it happens. There's no way you can like just flip the switch and go home, and all the stresses that you felt at work aren't going to somehow affect how you're treating your family at home. And
Yeah.
so when my wife recognizes that, I'm not up at 4 a.m. and coming home at 8 or 9 p.m. because I'm seeing patients and doing charts and running the business, but rather have more freedom in my schedule and more time for them. And I can go on vacation without getting emergency calls every other day, wherever
Mm.
we're at. Then she's like, okay, whatever coach or consultant you need, go ahead. We'll spend a few $1,000s to make your life a little less hairy, and give you and have our kids have a better picture of you as a father.
Yeah, I mean, how often do we, and this isn't just for physical therapists. I think PT owners probably experience this in large amounts, at least early on. But
Totally.
how often do we give the leftovers to the people at home after a long day at work? It's like, to be able, for me, that's probably the hardest hitting thought is for how many years I would come home with a moderately successful clinic that really like was me dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And me really holding on to that from a place of insecurity, because who am I when I'm not that, right?
Yeah, totally.
But coming home and like faking it through playing with my kids and stuff. And I think the generations of owners now are hopefully not where I was in that regard. But when you talked about that, that really resonated with me, is how there is no separation between these different environments. We are who we are. If we are better or more successful in one environment, it's because we're sacrificing something of ourselves at the other.
Mm.
And for us to be able to like learn, my favorite analogy when you described is the idea that we're all juggling different balls in life.
Mm-hmm.
We all have, there's a ball called work, and a ball called church, and a ball called home and family, and they're all made of different materials. And the only one that's made out of glass is family.
Mm.
Every work, as important as it is, it's a bigger ball that we're juggling, but it's made out of rubber.
Mm-hmm.
It will drop. And so as painful as it's been to hear, my journey, but listening to you talk about those moments, what I really sense is that overall understanding of like what matters most. And when you learn from dropping the ball here, it's so that you don't have to drop the ball
Mm-hmm.
on that family,
Yeah.
the most important one. So thanks for sharing. I think that's powerful to hear, how that's shaped you as a person. So, yeah. So do you have any memories of fun times, like in like, where, because I don't want to paint this picture that ownership sucks.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what were some of the best times professionally that you had? What are some of those moments?
Yeah. It was fun. It was a lot of it was surrounded around the patients. Sometimes you get a certain patient mix and you just look forward to those afternoons
Oh
because you're all
yeah.
just kicking it and chilling. And, once I got a TV in the office, it was watching the Olympics or the Major League Baseball playoffs, or, something would come up on TV that would spark a conversation and stuff like that. Those days were awesome. Getting your first checks, from insurance companies back in the day, like, holy crap, they paid me to actually do some work that I'm not even sure I know how to do well. And and like worrying that they're going to figure you out someday, and the auditor is going to come and said, you're actually not a good therapist, give us our money back. But actually, making something successful like that. We had some awesome, fun company parties with people. Honestly, acknowledgement to Stacy Sullivan. She was with me for a long time. And of course it was sad to see her pass, but my memory still revolves around her coming in every day. It's like, good morning, sunshine. And my wife said that to me the other day in the morning. I was like, oh, that's what Stacy used to say. And it was, so it's individual people and it's individual experiences that I remember more, that give me happy memories about it. Let alone it's something prideful to go back and say, hey, here's something that started back in 2002, and it's been an amazing journey, and changed a number of people's lives, not only the people that I've treated, but people that I've worked with and team members that we've had through the years. It's been a really cool experience to look back on that. But I can't say all that without saying, dude, some of our business trips that we had were some of the coolest times ever.
I really, yeah, that's what comes to mind when I was thinking about this interview.
Was it?
Was like, yeah, oh yeah, the times that some of the ones that you and I had were just epic.
Dude, and that was probably worth the price of admission for all the money that we spent on the consulting, was to simply go to some of the conferences, whether it was like to Florida or Seattle. I almost feel like I know Seattle like the back of my hand.
Oh, I calculated it. We spent 6 weeks back to back there totally. In a matter of 2 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we're in Seattle all the time. Love the place. And then we, of course, go to Montana or New York City and all these cool places together. We just kick it. It was awesome. It was so much fun. And so those experiences in that time were what really make it a lot of fun to look back and say, that was super cool. And then, to have the opportunity then to share those experiences with my family, and now to take some of my kids, to New York City, or tell them someday I'm going to take you to Whitefish and you're going to experience how amazing Whitefish is. Or I take my wife to Clearwater once in a while for a seminar or whatever, and see the amazing white sand beaches. That stuff is super cool.
It's neat because it's truly, it's almost like that investment is what forced us to open up to what it could look like if we weren't committed full-time to treating and running the aspects of our business that we weren't meant to, because I think about that too. I remember multiple times you and I would make the comment, who'd ever thought when we started this tiny little clinic in Florence, Arizona, that we'd be in New York on 9/11 at Ground Zero, or we would be in Florida on the white sand beaches, or we'd be in Seattle at the farmers market, the
Pike Place.
Yeah, the Pike Place there. Yeah. Just all the different things that we did, and ultimately we were able to take some trips and bring our spouses, and and it's like, in those things, they weren't like the reason why, but they were just these little like perks that occurred to help counter some of those dark times. I feel like every difficult time, at least that I experienced in that journey being with you, came with because it was a conversation I needed to have. I didn't know how to have it. It was usually a relationship that was out of alignment. I didn't know how to address it. And I just really feel what you're saying around that. And by the way, I just want to quickly highlight for your audience that you are an amazing technician. Like, your skill set of physical therapy is one of the best that I've ever come across. And I'm not just complimenting that, when Nathan and I were looking at setting up this business in Alaska, you were able to grasp the electrodiagnostic understanding, which is a totally different belt, right? It's not a different tool in a belt, it's a totally different belt. Totally. And you pass that exam, which is like a whole nother board plus some. I just put it to prove a point. I passed a kidney stone thanks to you. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that's right.
Real quick story. My urologist has told me since it's the biggest kidney stone he's ever seen pass from the kidney through the ureter. It was an 8x8 kidney stone. And I didn't know I had a kidney stone. I just thought I hurt my back. And Nathan and I would be in our business meetings and he'd be treating me. And I know for a fact that's what it did. You manipulated that kidney stone out of me. So I have proof.
I milked the kidney stone through your ureter.
It was a really intimate moment.
Exactly.
How intimate are we getting in these?
I don't. That might be TMI, but yeah, maybe. But that's true. But
your skill set was phenomenal. It's just, I think when I hear you talking, you're like, I didn't know what I was doing. It's like, I want to make sure people knew that you were a master at your craft. That's really good.
Well, it was, what's funny is that so I had this vision initially set up that I was going to open up my own clinic, but because of the work I had done in Casa Grande, you guys don't know, have to know the geography of Arizona, but I was working in Casa Grande, started a clinic in Chandler, but I always knew that I wanted to open up a clinic in Florence. That was like in the back of my head, always. And I don't know why I was thinking, got to go to Florence, got to go to Florence. And then, and so I opened up a clinic in Florence, bought the equipment, found the space, didn't have a single provider in my in hand. And then we met you, and Whitney's like, this guy's got to work for us. And I'm like, who's going to want to work in Florence? I mean, and you remember the space that we worked in. And I showed you the equipment that I had in my garage. I was like, yeah, I'm taking this down to Florence like on Tuesday. Do you want to come with me? Or somehow we set up a way to get down to Florence and show you. I was really nervous that you were going to see Florence, Arizona and be like, why am I working here? It was just the complete opposite, dude. You have to share with us your experience.
Yeah, it was really fun because, you know, you've got more years ahead of me than I do. And so in terms of experience in PT, so it didn't matter that you were only, you know, 2 years of piano lessons ahead of me. Yeah. To me, it was like you were a grand piano master. So we're driving out there, and it's 45 minutes from our house, and it's like getting close to an hour or whatever. We pull into this tiny little town, and all you see on the outskirts are jails and prisons.
Yeah.
I think the actual number is 18. I think they have 18 different facilities ranging from, like, you know, high security, maximum, whatever. And you pulled me up to this building that was probably 100 years old. And I think it was 600 or 800 square feet total.
Yeah.
And it was musky. It hadn't been, I mean, it was infested with lizards.
Well, remember, we had termite tunnels hanging from the ceiling.
Yes. Yes. And so I'll never forget, like, you walk me around, there's a big safe because it used to be a bank, like back when.
Back in the 40s or 50s.
40s. Oh, I think it was older than that. I think it was like
Maybe.
Wild West. And then, like, we get out to the car and you're like, so? Like, so what? You're like, what do you think? You want to work for me? And I'm like, we haven't talked money. Like, you literally showed me this, like, decrepit building, but I was just like, I'm optimistic. I loved that. Growing up in El Paso, Texas, it gave me this point of reference of, like, community and feel. And, like, it felt like what it ended up becoming, which was this, like, unbelievable experience being out with some of the most kind-hearted, family-oriented human beings I've ever known. They're still, to this day, the one population that I bleed for more than any other is actually the people of Florence.
Yeah.
They are as kind and generous as they are anything else, but it doesn't look like that when you're driving through it. When you're driving through it, you're like, what was that? And you brought it up. I'll just remember thinking, like, he's kind of new at this, I think. He offered me a job without a letter.
He kind of doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
You were dead on. That's funny, man.
Funny. Yeah, you were great. You were great to work with. You were always easygoing. You and I think the reason we were able to succeed all these years was just because we laughed at things. Like, truly,
yeah.
I think our relationship would have gone in a different direction if we didn't have so much in common over stand-up comedy. Like, you introduced me to Dane Cook when he was actually okay to listen to. And cool.
Yeah.
I was like, who is this guy? It was so cool. You introduced me to Arrested Development. That was, like, a big thing.
Oh, yeah, that's a must.
Oh, tell everybody what the name of our company is that we created. The one LLC.
Oh.
Well, there's two, actually, that are
Hermano
Holdings. Is
Hermano. That's right. And we had Banana Stand.
Banana Stand.
That's right.
Which was our one business that failed.
Oh, yeah. But Banana Stand, well, there's always money in the
There's always money in the Banana Stand.
And then Hermano still exists today.
Totally.
That was good times.
I got to ask you, I'm getting a sense of, like, you know, as we're getting close to the end of this, what do you feel, what would you like to share with the audience of what's next for first of all, I want to highlight some statistics that I wish I'd done right out of the gate. You're 2 years in, you're over 100 episodes in, you are at 35 and some change thousand listens. Mm-hmm. I mean, 35,000 listens, that blows my mind. And as you look forward for the podcast and your coaching and your masterminds, like, what do you see for yourself?
Oh, wow. It's hard for me to see that. I'm not necessarily visionary in that regard. But my vision is kind of limited a little bit forward, so I can see some steps and move in that direction. And if I like it, then I'll continue going down that path. But The mastermind has been cool and fulfilling. We've just had one meeting, but I love these guys, and it's exciting to see the banter and the collaboration between them. The coaching, I'll continue to do that. I really enjoy that. At some time, maybe it'll run its course, but I'm enjoying it a lot right now. The podcast, I'll continue doing it. As you know, sometimes honestly it's hard to find guests, and so I come back to guys who are solid, like you, and I just interviewed Eric Miller this morning, and I'll have some featured guests every so often that are the same dudes, but they do great stuff, and have a ton to share. So I'll keep doing the podcast because you know what, I find it really fulfilling, and at the end of the day, if I did stop, I'd be really comfortable with it because I think we put some awesome content out there, and it's out there for in perpetuity, right? My kids, grandkids, great grandkids can always hear my voice, and I think that's kind of cool. And I'm able to share some of the things that I believe are successful, not just about business ownership, but about life. And so, where does this all go? I don't know. We're loving Alaska right now and enjoying it, and I look forward to just doing more and serving more. You know, helping PT owners out there. That's kind of where my head is now.
I love it. I have something I'd like to ask for you to do as like a final thing, if you're cool with it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little bit different, but if it aligns for you to do it, if you want to wrap it up, that'd be great. But you're great. It all comes back to family, that glass ball, the thing that you mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast is the real reason why we're doing all this, as we help patients, as we have the courage to fail over and over again as business owners, is ultimately to shape us as leaders in our home, to help us make an impact where it matters most with those little children who are growing up. What would you like to say, knowing that 100 years from now, your great grandkids are listening to this? What would you like to tell them about what matters to Nathan Shields?
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's where I tend to get spiritual. I mean, I believe in God. Jesus Christ is my savior.
Don't speak to me, speak to them.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's where, a lot of it has to do with faith. I wouldn't be anywhere I'm at. Like I go throughout the day constantly thinking and honestly in my mind praying, maybe not on my knees, but praying like, what do I do next? I mean, I've got a list of to-do things here. What's the highest priority? Am I missing something? Because I'm going to start at the thing that's kind of easiest for me or that I think is highest priority. And inevitably a thought comes to my mind, well, you need to consider your wife today. I'm like, hadn't thought about that. This so-and-so kid, he's having some issues. What do I need to say to him? And it's either an inspiration to like, go talk to him now, or you know what, he's going to be okay. Just spend a little bit more time with him this week. And so and that's where I just have to be grateful for the influence of a kind Heavenly Father to give me those inspirations to lead my family. And that's where I can look back and I can look back so many times where I just see his hand in my life that, I'd be remiss to not be grateful that that's there. And I've spoken to you about it when we talk about business decisions, that simply either I feel good about it or I don't, based on the prayers that I've had and the answers that I feel like I've received. I wouldn't be, my wife and I talk about it all the time. Like how great is this? How cool is this? And this isn't a conversation that we have like now that we've reached the pinnacle type of conversation. No, it's been like that throughout our lives. We're like, how cool is it that we just witnessed this happen over the past 6 to 12 months? Or what would have happened if we hadn't been inspired to do that? Or how well did that turn out for us? I mean, we're talking about things that you otherwise maybe don't pray about. Like I had an inspiration to sell our house in Chandler, and it was not a buyer's market or a seller's market. And I talked to my wife about it. She felt good about it, and got the house ready in 7 days, put it on the market, got a full price offer in 24 hours. Again, not a seller's market. This, like the realtor was like, yeah, this doesn't happen right now in this market. And that's just a witness to me that, number one, he exists, and number two, that his hand works in mysterious ways. and so, it's a lot of it's about faith. A lot of it is, as we mentioned, Whitney, my wife, the huge support that she is. I think a lot of owners are like that. There's somebody in their life, whether it's a spouse or a parent or a family friend or a mentor of some kind, that they have to lean on. And that helps a ton, right? To have that, have someone who's in your corner, like no matter what, right? And giving you the push and the inspiration to live outside of your box and make you a little uncomfortable and force you to sacrifice things and things that you otherwise wouldn't sacrifice and stuff like that. So a lot of it, it goes to Whitney and maintaining that relationship. And it's those relationships, and you would agree with me. I mean, the relationships that we've developed over this time are so like powerful, emotional, fulfilling, bring joy, not happiness, but joy, right? The people that we've been able to work together with. So my relationship with you, super powerful and loving and caring and supportive. I know you're like my biggest cheerleader outside of my wife and family, right? But even down to Stacy Sullivan and Michelle and Erica and Katie. I mean, these people, these relationships that we have with people are just so fulfilling and amazing. And even the people who, came in and out of our lives, past employees that no longer work for us or whatnot, I still love and I enjoy them. And it's those relationships. I think about patients. The physical therapy profession is such a cool experience to affect so many people's lives positively and develop relationships in short amounts of time. Really cool opportunity. You get that with your patients. You get the same thing with your team members, especially your leadership team, who buys into your vision and has faith in you. And you're like, why do you have faith in me? I remember asking Stacy that all the time, like, why do you still work for me? I know you hate what I do, but they, but they have faith and they captured a vision that was probably grander than our own, which is weird. And then develop a relationship with you. And then, like we talked about, our network, dude, those relationships. If those guys reach out to me, like Vinod texted me a few weeks ago, I felt like a teenage fangirl.
Yeah,
Like
I
it's like
totally get that.
Vinod texted me, to
Mom.
Mom, Vinod wants to talk. So I mean, that kind of stuff, and to meet Demi and Sean Kirk, and honestly, dude, and the benefits of the podcast, I've had opportunity to talk to Heidi Janenga and some of the huge leaders in our industry that have been around for years and years and years, Randy Roche and Greg Todd and Sean Kirk, of course, I mentioned, and Jerry Henderson from Clinicians, and all these cool people that I never would have been able to meet before. So I've had an opportunity to develop some awesome relationships, but it all comes back to, dude, I feel like I'm living right. I've got my ethics pretty much in order. I rely on my Heavenly Father and Savior Jesus Christ to guide me on a daily basis and try to do what's right. And I have a path, and it's kind of that simple. That's what I hope my kids remember. I hope my kids remember that it's really not that hard. Your life's going to suck at times, right? I mean, we went through the experiences, but what did we come away with, dude? We came away with wisdom and knowledge and an ability to empathize with other people who go through the same thing and say, hey, dude, I've been there. You want to know what you can do about it?
Yeah.
And so, and help them in that regard, and not just PT owners, but dude, with our kids, right? With our spouses, you can have the same empathy when you go through crap like that, because we're not at a point yet where our kids are married. So heaven forbid our kids get married and now have to deal with spouses of their own. And we're gonna be like, dude, I had that argument 10 times over with my wife. Here we go. Yeah, exactly. And then they have kids of their own. They're like, Dad, what are we gonna do? But it's because we went through some of those crappy trials along the way that helped us learn and gain wisdom and humility, right? And so that's some of the stuff that I'll always be grateful for. It's been a cool experience in that regard.
Well, thanks for that answer. I just, on behalf of everyone listening, thank you for being who you are, for creating the podcast. I love and adore you, man. It's a real treat to be in your life, and I'm grateful for just the example you set, not just before this not just in the podcast, but who you were beforehand, and your continual application to be a better human is inspiring. I wish people in the audience could know you the way that I do, and ultimately, they get to a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So, thank goodness for the PT Owners podcast.
Well, thanks for joining me today, dude. It was great to sit and kind of shoot the bull with you and reminisce.
Yeah, totally.
Like I said, I was kind of nervous about how this would go because I've always been one to highlight the guest, and I rarely like to take the spotlight. So I didn't know how that was going to go. But yeah, it's been awesome to just think about it, things
Me
and
too.
how
I
it's
love it. My favorite podcast so far for me.
That's cool, because you're the one that wants attention.
I kind of felt like I still got some. Like,
yeah, there you go.
They're listening to you. They're like, yeah, but Will is there.
It comes back around.
It comes back around.
To that middle child. Dude. Okay, so what you didn't say as we wrap up is, how do people get in touch with you? I mean, this is when you're ready to take on more clients, because you guys are killing it. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, what we'll do for anybody who's interested is, if you're not sure about your existing billing solution, in the last couple of months, I think one of the reasons we've been successful is I don't have to grow this thing. Like, I want it to be a major influence in the industry, but I don't have to grow this billing company out of a need to, like, I don't know. What we ultimately care about is making sure you get what you need. So in the last month, I've told people that they should stay with their in-house solution. I've told multiple people that. I've told other people that they should outsource, but I'm not their solution. I'm not everything to everyone, but who I can serve, I can go deep with. And who I'm serving are people who want to grow. I want people who are anywhere between 1 and 5 locations. I'll consider bigger companies, but if you have between 1 and 5 locations and you have desire to be free of your company, that's who I want to serve. So I'll just give you my email is will@theprofitablept.com.
Okay.
And my billing company is called In the Black. And I have a separate email for that, but I'm going to keep it really simple for people. It's the same as my YouTube brand. will@theprofitablept.com. Just email me. You can call me. I don't know if I should give my cell out, because I'm happy to.
That's all right.
I'm worried for the people that I will spend too much time on the phone with them. Like, what's up? I need attention.
That's right.
Email's fine.
Imagine this is after August 1st, 2020. Is it going to be intheblack.com, or what's your website going to be?
So my website is going to be intheblackbilling.com.
Oh, okay, cool. So people
intheblackbilling.com, August 1st. Nothing's there right now. And we're super excited. We do have a vision of taking on another 10 clients.
That's awesome.
And just really going deep with them and helping them just, blow their minds. Like, honestly, we want to change. It's such a fun industry to get into because there's nothing sexy about it. So we're bringing the sexy back in a way it's never been.
Okay.
Like, I'm doing all sorts of weird things. Not weird. I'm doing like normal things you do in other businesses, like appreciation and keep relationships strong.
Okay.
It's so fun. I love it. It's so much fun. I still feel like I'm treating, is what it feels like.
Oh yeah.
Well, anyway, that's how you get a hold of me.
Well, that's awesome. And the cool thing about that, and I don't know where this comes from in us, because I've done the same thing with coaching clients. Like, I've had people call me and I'm like, I don't know if I'm the best fit for you. Or I said, I don't want you to sign up with me unless you talk to 2 other people. And,
nice.
And so I've done that a few times, and I'm trying not to say that because we're some kind of charitable human beings, but I think what I'm talking about and the way you presented that is that that's a true consultant and someone who recognizes the needs of the person that's calling, and not necessarily your need to acquire another client. And so, so if people who are coming to get a consultation with you, maybe they're going to come away with a couple nuggets. And I do the same thing when people call me about coaching clients, whether they come with me or not. I try to give them a couple, words of wisdom or my experience share of some kind or other. Same thing for you. You're going to say, hey, you might want to look at changing your EMR, or stay with your current EMR, or or stay with your current in-house billing person, but just add a couple of statistics or reports that might make them more efficient and hold them more accountable.
That's what we
I think
do.
that's a true consultant would do.
It's true. And so what we offer is a free profitability breakthrough audit. And I've done this a number of times where people will give me their data. We sign an NDA. I completely show them where there's money. And I will tell you, there hasn't been a single time. I've done 20 of these at this point. I've never found less than $10,000 sitting of absolute profit in their business right now that they can go get.
And that's bottom line, like in their pockets,
That's
if they
bottom
just
line
simply made a
profit.
call or two. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I show them that, they don't move forward with us because they only needed some tweaking with their existing solution. Awesome. To your point, what you just said, I've heard said differently, and I love this, which is that we can help everyone. We can serve only a select few, and who we serve, instead of going a mile wide, we're going to go a mile deep. And so it's a little selfish for us to be helpful to everyone, because that's the only way we can find those who we can go really deep with. And that's where you and I have learned from people like the coaches you've mentioned. They just go so deep that, like, you think of them as family, like a father. Like, you can't separate that. So I'm so excited because I know that's what's happening on your end with your clients. And I'm just grateful that you're doing it, man. My vision I see you being a master coach in this industry. You already are, but this is your first group. So I just am putting it out there in terms of intention that Nathan Shields will have that name of a major influence in the coaching world of our industry.
Oh, that'd be cool. as long as it gets me out the door and on the lake by 2 p.m. that's fine.
Oh, which is out your back door, by the way, that lake. Anyway.
All right, cool. Well, dude, thanks for your time. Much love. It's always great talking to you.
Yeah, equally. Thanks again for having me.
All right, see you well.